Good afternoon. My name is Jose Padilla. Throughout history, public schools have limited the rights of students, especially those rights listed under the First Amendment. Now, to understand what the First Amendment is, of course, we're going to have to look into it. And now, to answer the question, how are the limitations of students' rights, an illustration of the First Amendment in U.S. public schools, we would have to look at what the First Amendment is, what it grants, how schools have limited these rights, and why they have done so. Now, this leads to my claim. Restrictions to students' rights in public schools demonstrate a violation to the First Amendment. Now, what exactly is the First Amendment? The First Amendment is a part of the United States Constitution, and it guarantees the freedom of right, freedom of religion, and the right to petition. It is clearly stated under the First Amendment that the government cannot violate with these rights. Now, this is why many argue that since the First Amendment is part of the United States Constitution that basically frames the federal government, that it is illogical for the First Amendment to be violated. As you can see, this gentleman right here, he expresses most of us as he is angered that our freedom of speech has been interfered with. Now, public schools have limited students' rights before. A great example of this is Tinker v. Des Moines. This was a court case in the mid-1960s. Students started wearing these black armbands to school, and they were doing this to represent their beliefs. And they wanted peace and truce in the Vietnam War, so that's why they wore these armbands. Now, the principal got notified of these rules, of these armbands, and he decided to make one simple policy. Either you take them off or you face suspension. Several students were suspended, and with the help of their parents, they were able to file a lawsuit against the school because they recognized the First Amendment rights and said, hey, this is not right, why are we getting suspended for this? Now, this ended up in the hands of the Supreme Court, and this is where the big question comes to mind. Was this a violation or not? As a result, it was a violation. The Supreme Court ruled that the school was wrong in suspending them because the students were clearly expressing their beliefs and rights in a normal way. And according to the First Amendment, this is totally right. So the students had the right take, I guess. Now, this brings an idea to certain restrictions that may limit students' rights, these being time, place, and manner restrictions. Time, place, and manner restrictions basically state that if you are expressing something offensive or something that may interfere with the peace and environment, you may not express it. And this allows certain rights to be limited. As you can see, this is an example of time, place, and manners. It says, no soliciting without permit, violators will be prosecuted. Time being any time, place being in that property, and manner, no soliciting. Now, it is important to recognize the government's perspective. They want to keep peace, they want to maintain order, and they want to provide safety for all of us. So they would rather limit the rights of someone expressing something offensive than letting that person express it and offend many. Concluding, students' rights have been limited before in public schools, and these rights should be expressed under the First Amendment. Students have the right to express anything they want as long as they are not expressing something offensive or that may disturb the peace. Thank you. What questions do you have?
All right, two questions for you. First up, what information did you need before you began your research, and then how did that information shape your research?
Well, before I started doing this research, to be honest, I did not know what the First Amendment was. So I obviously needed to know what the First Amendment was, what it granted, and I also needed to know time, place, and manner restrictions. These play a big role in determining whether rights should be limited or not.
All right. And next question, what additional questions emerged from your research, and why are these questions important?
Some questions that emerged from my research was, why just students? In schools, there's faculty and staff, so why is it just students that are limited rights where it could be staff and other people too?
All right, thank you. You're done. Brief.